All right, hi everybody, and good morning. We're here for my research methods class. It's a Friday, the day before our spring break begins. I don't know if anybody else is excited, but today is the last day of this week, and then next week is spring break, which is very exciting. Oop. Like, you can hear me talking to myself on the phone. But really exciting that we have spring break coming up. I'm sure a lot of you are very ready for it. I am very ready. Going on a cruise tomorrow morning, so it feels real today. Have a lot of packing left to do. But what we'll do today is we'll go over a few thoughts from last week really quickly, and then some reminders about this week. And then again, next week is spring break, so nothing due next week. So probably kind of a shorter session today, as we don't have a whole lot to go over in terms of next week's materials. But we do have a few things for this week, so I want to make sure that you are feeling good and clear about everything. And of course, if you have any questions, this would be a wonderful time to ask them. So let's go ahead and head over to Canvas together. And if we scroll all the way down here, again, we are right here. We are in week number 11. And you can see we only have 17 weeks. So we're definitely getting there into the semester. But let's go back really quickly and look at some things from last week. So week number 10. So last week in week 10, we were looking at chapter 11 and discussion number 10, homework number 13. So I want to talk just a little bit about the discussion and a little bit about the homework assignment. Let's start with the homework assignment, and most of you did a really beautiful job on this. You read through the article, did a good job answering my questions. I just want to kind of highlight a couple of things, and I know this topic is difficult. In this class, everything builds on what came before. So if you end up getting a little bit confused a couple of weeks ago, it starts to get more and more difficult as we get into some of these materials. And a couple of you have reached out to me saying that you have a little bit of confusion. Remember, you can always go back and watch some of the old lectures again since they're recorded, or reread through a chapter. But for the most part, the vast majority of you just did an absolutely beautiful job on this, and I was really impressed at how well you examined the article and the experiment and looked at internal and external and construct validity. Really nicely done for the most part. Some confusion still on the independent and dependent variables and the levels and how they're being measured. So in the first experiment, the independent variable was something that they termed environmental order. And the different levels were either an orderly or a disorderly room, right? So environmental order would be the independent variable. And then the levels would be orderly or disorderly. The dependent variable was healthy choices or charitable behavior as measured by their action that they take. And so what you always want to ask yourself again is, what is the effect of environmental order on the choices that somebody makes, right? And then environmental order is going to be the independent variable and their choices are the dependent variable. And then you can break it down. What are the different conditions they might be exposed to? And how are we going to measure that variable? So again, most of you got that, and most of you are doing a wonderful job, but just to highlight that a little bit. Definitely a between subjects design. Participants were randomly assigned to one of different categories, not the same categories. In terms of construct validity, right, we looked at the idea of like orderliness, right? That is definitely something that we are attempting to manipulate, how we are operationalizing that in different ways, whether there's clutter or no clutter, papers being all over the place or no papers. So looking a lot at how we were defining some of those terms and operationalizing some of the things that were in the experiment. In terms of internal validity, we were looking at manipulation of the orderliness of the room, right? And looking at some of the control variables that they tried to implement. And some of you did a great job of this, of identifying that the rooms had the same sunlight exposure, the same view. They had the same amount of time in each of the rooms. All of those being variables that they were trying to control in order to eliminate, confounds as much as possible. But there definitely were confounds. The orderly and disorderly conditions were in different rooms. Any number of things could have been different, like the smell, the amount of ambient noise, the color in the room. There was no office stuff in the orderly room, but there was office stuff in the disorderly room. So there's lots of little things that you could have talked about here. And in terms of external validity, you could have talked a little bit about how there wasn't a lot of information given about the sample. We don't really know how they collected it, and that it was kind of small. right? That might make it difficult for us to generalize the responses. And so, again, most of you did a beautiful job kind of going through these different elements. Very similar responses for the second question, but looking a little bit more at creativity as the dependent variable. But for the most part, again, a lot of you got, 25 out of 25 points, or really close, like 21, 22, 23 points for messing up a little bit on like the independent, dependent variables, or maybe not quite giving me enough with the validity questions that were below. So I don't know if there are any other questions or comments or thoughts about the homework. If there are, feel free to put them in the chat, and I would be happy to answer them for you. Otherwise, the other thing that you had due last week, if we go back here to week number 10, was discussion number 10. And again, for the most part, really, really nicely done. As I said, I feel very impressed with how well a lot of you are doing. We were looking at this little experiment, right, and identifying, again, the independent and dependent variables, how they're being measured, how they're being operationalized, right, and then what kind of subject design are we using. So all of this is trying to connect to each other and build on each other. And as I said, most of you did a wonderful job. Don't forget to always continue responding to a classmate. Those 2 points, you don't want to miss out on them. Otherwise, most of you got full credit here. Again, I'm really impressed with how well most of you are doing on the materials in this class. So really nicely done as we move forward from week number 10. Again, if you have any thoughts or questions, feel free to put them in the chat. I'm monitoring that here on my phone. Most of you did the extra credit as well. This week we move on to chapter 12. So week 11, chapter 12, and then next week is spring break. So chapter 12, if we click on this, you're going to want to, of course, read chapter 12 in the textbook. I really think the textbook will give you a wonderful overview. And what we're covering here are experiments with more than one independent variable. So we're going to make it a little more complicated. So I'm sorry if you're like barely hanging in there. We're going to continue to make it a little more intricate. So what we're looking at here is why we might add another variable. And we're going to get what are called factorial designs and interactions that can happen. So you're going to be identifying and interpreting those main effects versus interaction effects and the different components that can be present. So you'll look at interactions in research, how we can test two variables, what are some of the ways that we can use this information, interpret this information, and then you'll learn things like these little graphs and 2x2 designs and so on. So make sure you read through all of that or listen to it. On the Beyond the Book page, I did find a little bit more about this, so a closer look at factorial designs, some advantages and disadvantages. I found a little brief video that introduces these in a really nice and accessible way that I thought might be helpful if you were struggling just a little bit, so I included that here. And then, of course, on the last page, as always, are the key terms that you'll need to know for the exam. So we do have one exam left in this class. It will be the final. The final exam is not cumulative. It's just a fourth exam, other than a small component. So for the most part, you're studying these things as we go along, and then you will have some terms and ideas that will be cumulative that I will let you know about on that last study guide. And they're going to be kind of big concepts that we've been covering over the semester in order just to make sure that you hold on to them. So make sure you click through everything in here, watch the videos, read everything that I've included for you. And then, of course, like always, I also have a lecture video for you for this week. So you'll want to watch the Chapter 12 lecture video where I am covering this with PowerPoint slides. So the video is going to be really helpful for you in understanding these materials. Of course, you might want to take notes, pay attention. Everything on here will appear on the exam. So hopefully these are helpful for you. I did go through and make a video for every chapter. So I hope that you are finding them to be a little bit helpful. And then, of course, we have a discussion this week, right? So discussion number 11, if we take a look at that. So as always, this is worth 15 points, 13 points for your responses to my questions, and then 2 for your responses to a classmate or a peer. As always, you probably want to watch my little video introduction for more tips and suggestions. You're going to read this little scenario right here, and then I have the data summarized right here in a little chart. and then answer the following questions. So in one of their studies, Strayer and his students tested whether people would get better at driving while talking on a cell phone if they practiced doing so. They had participants drive in a simulator while talking on a hands-free cell phone and while not talking on a cell phone. The same people participated over several days, so they had a chance to practice the multitasking. On the first day, they were considered to be the least experienced, and on the last day, the most experienced. On the last day, they were tested in both a familiar environment and a slightly different driving environment to see if the first days of practice would transfer to new content. The researchers collected data on how many collisions or accidents the driver got into on the simulator, and here are their data. And you can see here's the single task versus dual task, the number of collisions day 4 versus in a familiar context versus in a new context versus day 1. So lots of information here on this little piece of like this little chart, if you will. So when you're done thinking about all that and reading the materials and reading the chapter and going through the lecture, you'll answer the following questions related to factorial designs. Number 1, what kind of design is this? Put your answer in the form of a blank by blank, and hopefully that will make more sense after going through the lecture materials. Number 2, what are the independent variables? There's more than one, right? And their levels or conditions in this study. So identify both of the independent variables and the different conditions. This graph might be helpful for you in identifying those. What is the dependent variable in this study and how is it being measured? What is it that we're measuring and how are we doing that? And then I want you to create, either by computer or hand, a line graph depicting the results shown above and upload the image to your discussion posting. So you can create this by hand or you can do it by computer. You can upload the image. Here you can see somebody has done that already, or you can attach it as an image below. But make sure that you do create a little bar line graph, a scatter plot, if you will, in order to show me that you can do that. And then you're going to estimate and describe any main effects or interactions in this study. You would need statistics to calculate specific effects, so you're just going to estimate and describe based on the data above and based on your line graph. So once you've made your line graph, you should be able to look at that and compare it to the different ones in the lecture in the book and make some conclusions, right? It's going to look very similar to one of those that we covered in the book. And then number 6, what might you conclude from the results of this study? Does experience seem to affect cell phone use while driving? So when you're ready to answer that, you'll hit reply. And then, of course, don't forget to reply to a classmate to get those 2 points. But all of this is, again, building on the materials that we've covered so far. So we're adding an extra independent variable here, which I know makes it a little more complicated, but hopefully you are hanging in there with that and following along. And I will enjoy getting to see your little line graphs that you create and hearing your thoughts about this little experiment. Let's see, I think that is kind of all of the big stuff for this week. Reading the chapter, reading the lecture, watching the lecture video, discussion number 11. I will, of course, give you the extra credit here in just a moment. Are there any questions at all for me? I do have some reminders for you as we get ready to go into spring break. First, as usual and as always, if you could take a moment to double check your subscription status. This has definitely fallen off quite a bit. I know I keep asking, but if you haven't renewed this, if you could please do so, I would really appreciate it. Alexis, I see that yours has expired right here. Jacob, Samantha, again, if you don't have the football cake next to your name, and if you've never done this, it's not too late to do it either, but it saves me so much time, and there are very few people still subscribed. So I would appreciate it if you have a chance to go in and fix that before we meet again after spring break. We do not have a Twitch session next week at all. I will be in Mexico, so you probably don't want me trying to connect to the internet on a cruise ship in Mexico. But we won't have a live stream next week because it's spring break. So when we come back from spring break, we will, of course, have another one for week number 12, and I will send out an announcement on when that will be, whether or not we'll keep the same Friday time or go back to our previous time. I will let you know right after spring break. So there aren't any assignments for next week, but do make sure that you get everything done for this week before Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. Let me also give you the Twitch extra credit question really quickly. so that you have that and can get the 2 points for joining me on here today. So here's the extra credit question. If I put this here in the chat, what is the difference between a main effect and an interaction effect? So describe what is the difference between a main effect and an interaction effect. And when you're ready to answer that, you'll head over to Canvas. And since we're in week number 11, you'll click on optional Twitch extra credit number 11. And then up here at the top, start assignment. And this is where you can then type your response in the box below, and then hit submit when you're ready. Get your confetti burst, 2 points of extra credit. Oh, and what were those? I'm not sure. It looked like a little windmill in there. There's always something random in there. I look for it, something to look forward to. But this is due by Sunday night at 11:59 p.m. So make sure that you do go ahead and do this if you want to get the points for joining me today. If you haven't already put your name in the chat, make sure you do that unless you are subscribed, in which case you don't need to worry about it. But I believe that is just about everything that I wanted to cover with all of you. Anyone have any questions or thoughts or anything for me? Anyone going anywhere fun for spring break that you want to share in the chat? Anything interesting or fun? I hopefully a chance to relax a little bit, maybe sleep in and have a little bit of extra time. But is anyone traveling at all? I'll wait just a minute to see. And of course, if you don't have any questions and you want to take off, we are kind of officially done. But if you are going anywhere fun, feel free to throw it in the chat. It's always cool to put that out there. Hopefully that just means you're planning to rest and sleep, right? A lot of my students are going to visit colleges that they got accepted into and trying to decide which one to go to. So if you are traveling, stay safe and have fun. And I hope you all have a wonderful and relaxing spring break, a wonderful rest of today and the rest of the week. And what I'm going to do, I will hang out for a little while. If you have any questions or thoughts or anything. Otherwise, I will see you all after spring break writing term papers. Oh no, I made all of my classes have their papers due this week in hopes that they could actually relax during spring break. But I know that's always the case, isn't it? Let's see. No traveling, but I have to renew my pediatric and advanced cardiac care licenses. Positive juju that, yeah, good luck, right? It sounds like a lot of thinking and work. So yes, good luck. But hopefully you have extra time to do that, and that helps a little bit as well. So whatever you end up doing, may it be relaxing in some capacity. So I'm going to minimize my video, but I will hang out for a little while here if you have any other questions for me. Otherwise, again, finish up the stuff for this week. Have a wonderful break. And I will see you for week number 12 when we come back.